My name is Sophia Kyriacou, and I'm a broadcast motion designer and a 3D artist. I've been working in the industry now for about nearly 23 years, and I've been using Cinema 4D for nearly 20 years. So when I first started using it, it was version 4, and now we're on version 21. But there's been some half stops along the way, because that would not make 20 years nearly. To give you a little bit of an insight, the kind of work that I do, I design anything from opening titles to content graphics to explainer videos. I've created for a variety of audiences, so from adults age range to young children. I've created for documentaries, I've done program brands, I've worked on news, I've worked on consumer programs, I've done all sorts of stuff and worked with a variety of budgets as well. So why am I here? I'm here to talk to you about this. I was commissioned to create the title sequence for the BBC US elections that ran late last year for the midterms. And I was very, very lucky in that I had an open brief, so I could do almost pretty much whatever I liked. And it was designed to go out on not only the domestic channels like BBC One and BBC News Channel, it was also created to go out on BBC World, which gets on average about 101 million viewers per week. So that's quite a big audience. What was my inspiration? Well, I am always fascinated by sculpture and kind of architecture, and I love the fact that you can go and put a camera and shoot all these angles and get something really quite dynamic. So when you look at the Capitol Hill building, it's made out of neoclassical architecture, and what I really love about it is it has this kind of ornate kind of geometric shapes and patterns and so on and so on. And I was thinking, oh, that's really nice. And I love marble as well. And what I love about marble is, you know, when it's lit by the sun, it will give a certain light. When it's lit artificially, it gives a certain tone and so on and so on. I thought, right, I'm going to do something with this building. But I also love steampunk. And guess what I love about it is the fact that when you look at an Edison bulb, and it's like a piece of architecture in its own right. And when you look at those filaments, and when it's switched on, it just comes to life. And it gives you this lovely kind of tactile, kind of warm kind of glow. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring these two opposite worlds together, and I'm going to make them collide. And that's kind of usually how I work. You know, I like to kind of bring different kind of worlds together and just do something with them. So, the concept. Originally, I was kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to build a 3D kind of American Eagle, and I'm going to make it all steampunk, and it's going to look amazing, and so on and so on. But that's where it ended. It wasn't going to take me anywhere, so I had a kind of plan B. And I thought, right, I'm going to do something with this building. And I was kind of thinking, right, I want to get into this dome, and I want to try and break into this building without setting the alarms off. But before I even thought about the concept, I was kind of thinking, I want to create something that's cinematic. I want it to feel kind of filmic and something you'll see on a big screen as well. So something with very, very high production values, because it's a very big event, right? And again, I was kind of thinking, yeah, I'm going to bring these two worlds, and it's going to be contrasting worlds of kind of the neoclassical architecture and steampunk and so on. And then within a lot of my work as well, I kind of love to play with scale. So are you inside the building or are you outside the building? You're looking through it, but is that the outside or the inside? So that's quite a common theme within my work. And I wanted to play with metaphors as well. When you look at, when I go through the chair shot, the metaphor for that was about seats gained and seats lost, because it comes together, but it also pulls apart. So I'm going to run, I put together a little making of reel to show you, just to give you a little bit of an insight of the kind of workflow, and here it is. Okay, that's the making of reel. Thank you very much. So, this was my workflow. Cinema 4D up there right at the top. It's my favorite application. I love it. Everything is cinema. And I textured everything in Substance Painter. So I kind of prepped all my UVs in Cinema 4D, exported it out into Substance, did my texturing back into Cinema 4D, and then rendered it out in Arnold. I use XP cloth particles for my flag, my wavy flag. Like I say, I rendered everything off in Arnold. And what I love about Arnold is I love anything hyperreal. And it kind of gives me that. I did all my compositing, any kind of corrections, adding typography in After Effects. And I love grading, and I love using Red Giant's Magic Bullet. So I did it all in that. But let's look at the top shot. And I guess the point I want to make within my presentation today is that it's actually quite easy. It might look incredibly maybe sophisticated, but it's really quite an easy workflow. So let's look at this opening shot. Let's strip it back. That's what I had within that scene. Okay, so I had one arch. I duplicated it 3 times. I had a back wall. I had a floor. I've removed the floor because I really like the grid in this presentation. And I've also removed the centerpiece just for this part. So that's right. That's quite easy, right? Let's go back. This time, let's look at our lighting rig. Let's fly through. Again, incredibly simple. I've got an area light here that hits that first arch. It grabs the second arch as well. At the back here, we've got a soft light. We've got hitting that back wall. So when that camera's looking right through, it lights up. And then we have 3 volumetric lighting, and that's kind of gives it that kind of mistiness feel to it. And yes, volumetric lighting does come at a cost, but it's worth it. And I ran everything across a render farm anyway. So that's our lighting rig, and that's shot number 1. Let's look at the dome. And in all honesty, the dome gave me a little bit of a heartache, because I was kind of thinking, right, how am I going to get into this building and it not look like a mess? And initially I was kind of thinking, right, I'm going to maybe Boolean that kind of dome downwards, but I thought, no, that's not going to look really sophisticated. And then I've got the issue of my little character right at the top, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this character? But the answer was in front of me when I looked at the geometry again. And you've got 9 different segments. So I just split all the segments up. And once I split them up, I just animated them down. And I thought, great, that's going to work, because that's going to echo the kind of steampunk theme. So you're kind of bringing the 2 together. And that's what I did. So once I had one, It was literally just a case of running it across a radial MoGraph cloner, and there you go. So now, when it animates, they all animate at the same time. But there was one more thing. It was too smooth. And I didn't like it being smooth. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to delete that Phong tag. And yes, some people might look at it and say, why is she using low geometry? But no, that's again part of the concept. I wanted it to look like low geometry, again to echo the mechanical side of steampunk. So there you go. That's how I animated the dome. And that's the final shot. And I added a little bit of animation, a little bit of twist, just to, a bit more interest. And I when I was kind of working with this model and stuff, and I kind of want it to almost look a bit like a Fabergé egg, that kind of expensive, like a little jewelry box opening up. And there's all these little things inside. My chair. For me, the kind of chair and the power loom as well, my little stars. And when I was kind of looking for inspiration, I thought, how am I going to design this chair and stuff? And then it suddenly hit me. I thought, you know what? I really love old-fashioned typewriters, like the old Olivetti typewriters. And the answer just was right in front of me. That looks like a chair seat. And when you look at the mechanism of the typewriter, the way it hits the paper, that's how I'm going to animate it. So that really inspired me, and I thought, right, here we go. I started building, and the way I kind of built it was I had children and I parented everything with children. And once I had one, it was just a case of replicating the same kind of structure for the base as well. And I put kind of cylinders to do the animation. And here is the animation, just the back seat. And I put a little bit of kind of vibrate tag on it, because in reality, nothing is, everything has got a bit of a kickback. So that's really worked doing that. And here's the finished animation of that chair. Again, it's the metaphor, seats are gained, seats are lost. And then run it across a big radio cloner, got my chairs. They all animated at the same time. And I was kind of thinking, what about if I stagger that animation? And then I thought, no, it won't work, because I don't have enough seconds to play with in my music track. So you've got to kind of think and cut your cloth accordingly as well. And this was once I textured it in Substance Painter, that's what the chair material looked like. So I textured it to make it look like leather, and you got brass, and the base of it is kind of brown suede as well. Now, everything was texture mapped. So all the kind of UVs, everything was kind of prepped up in Cinema 4D, where I went out into Substance Painter, back into Cinema 4D, and then set up all my materials to render off in Arnold. So let's look at UV projection mapping and texture density. So here's our cog, and we are in UV edit mode. So we've got to go in and create a material now. It doesn't matter what resolution at this point. Drag and drop it onto the object. Okay, and then you've got to go in and generate a UV coordinates, because that's your texture tag. Let's go to the other side now. Let's turn that layer off. And then have a look at this texture. It's looking wrong. Everything is stretched and pulled, and that's never going to texture well. So I went in and optimized the UV mapping by optimal and realign it a few times until it started looking right. And you can see now everything is beautifully unwrapped and nice and tidy. And that's how it should be. Okay. So we are now back into standard mode. And we need to delete that material. We don't need it anymore. But make sure you go in and lock it, because if you lose that, that's not good. So let's just delete it. I exported things. I exported everything as either an FBX or a .obj file, depending on how it worked. Let's go into Substance now, and we need to bake. So we're baking normals, world space normal, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, thickness. Here we go. That looks nice. So once I've baked everything, I can now start painting. So I created this material. Once I created one material for my cogs, I saved it as a smart material. And I duplicated the bronze yellow material because I wanted to create a mask so I can make it, so I can age it. So here goes. There you go, just create a mask and add a generator and just crank some of these settings. So go global blur, global balance. Let's scroll down. Texture opacity. You see that's updating. Curvature opacity. That was a bit too much, so I went back into texture and restored some of it back. I was happy with that. So let's go back into Cinema 4D now. Okay, so we're setting up our Arnold Materials. So it's a standard shader. Let's open our shader network and just join all these up. There you go. Diffuse, roughness, metalness. Watch that top left now. There you go. Normal maps, height maps. And then let's go back into our main window and drag and drop that onto the model. And let's have a look at it in the viewfinder. And what I did was, I kind of created just a very simple lighting rig so I can just zoom, move it around just to make sure that material was kind of working and looking how I wanted it to. So that worked, I was happy with that. Okay, let's have a look at the flag now. And this was created using XP Cloth FX. Again, it's really quite simple. So go in and create a plane, scale it up, put some extra segments in there. I put 50-50. And then go into X Particles and add a Cloth FX. Go in there and go into modifiers, add turbulence, XP turbulence. So now, if I hit play, what's going to happen? It falls out of the sky. Why is that? Because it's dynamic. So we need to go back and we need to change that by turning the gravity setting off and the emitter, because I don't want to see the emitter. And just crank some of these settings. So now when you hit play, okay, that's doing something, but it doesn't look right. And the way around that I found was go into X Particles, XP Attractor. There you go. And now crank a few of these force, acceleration, speed limit. See what happens. Now that's playing like a flag, a wavy flag. But the geometry is really low at this point. So I went in and added a subdivision surface. Now it's nice and smooth. Let's have a look at it in the viewport, move it around and see what we get. There you go. That's kind of working. So I was really happy with that. Exported it as an Alembic file, re-imported it back in. It worked. Okay, so that's our flag. Again, this is the little star, just like my little chair. This is the power loom. And again, the way I kind of designed this was you've got this white flag which reveals the kind of flag being put together. And that's kind of, again, deliberate. So originally I had this wooden loom and I was thinking, okay, what can I do with this asset? And I thought, right, probably nothing. So I completely rebuilt it from scratch, like this. Whoa, that's a bit fast. So yeah, I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to use this old loom I had, so I completely rebuilt it. And again, just like I did with the cogs, I put it into Substance Painter, I textured everything, put it back into Cinema 4D. That's the Arnold render of just the asset. Let's wipe again. Let's put it into the environment. But you know what? There's a bit of a hot spot here, and I had to fix that. So I kind of rendered it on a background on its own because I didn't want to move the light because I like the way the light was hitting on the power loom. There you go. Beauty render with volumetric lighting. That kind of little mist you get with the volumetric lighting. That kind of works, but it needs grading. There you go. There's grading. That was the final grade. And I was really happy with that. And here's the animation. So let's look at that camera. And if you don't use target cameras, have a play with them because you can get some really cool dynamic shots with target cameras. And what I did was I placed the target right in the middle of that power loom. And here's my camera. And look at the one on the left. That worked. It did the trick. Now you're probably wondering, is she going to play this title sequence or not? I am. Here it goes. So that's the BBC US Election Titles 2018. Before I go, you can find me on Vimeo. I have a Vimeo channel, so Sophia Kyriacou. I'm on Twitter as well for the odd daily rant and the design retweets at Sophia Kyriacou. And I'm on Instagram as well. And you can check out some of my full sequences and descriptions on my website, www.sophiakyriacou.com. Thank you very much.